Hello there, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here. This is video one for the price list that will go out 9 p.m. sharp this Wednesday, Sydney time, October 30th. If you would like to be on that mailing list, drop me a note at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Okay, preamble out of the way. This is a classic rock, punk, pop list with some Aussie as well. But this is a pretty special list, and I'll explain why in a second. The first four records are arguably my favorite records of the 80s, 90s, 60s, and 70s in that order. So I wonder if you guys can guess what they might be. I'm going to start with the record that is probably my favorite record of the 80s. And it's quite an emotional record for me because, actually, for lots of reasons. I'll show you what it is. It's the Pogues, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. So, I'm just going to show you something. This is my dad. He passed away 3 years ago on October 9th. And it was COVID time here in Australia, and I couldn't get home to Ireland for the funeral. So I found myself talking to my family, but listening to a lot of music. And there were some people on a music group that I spent a bit of time talking to. It was an emotional time. And the people on that group know who they are. Some of you are on the list. And we pick a record, and everyone listens to that record, and we review it, and we talk to each other about it. And this was the record that I listened to in the days after my dad's passing. And I wrote a review. And I thought, if I can get through it, I might read it. So this was written to that group on, I think, 2 days after my dad's passing. The Pogues, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Take my hand and dry your tears. So sings Shane MacGowan on the broad, majestic Shannon, the final song of the Pogues' classic 1988 album, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Take my hand, forget your fears, babe. There's no pain, there's no more sorrow. I've been listening to this record on rotation since Sunday. It reminds me of home. It's made me cry a few times. This record is a rambunctious tear, and it's often a party song followed by another of almost unbearable nostalgia if you're living away from home. It's so Irish and then not. And of course, it is ironic that the Pogues were primarily an English band, a London band, not an Irish one. The island, it is silent now, but the ghosts still haunt the waves, and the torch lights up a famished man whose fortune could not save. My dad loved Shane MacGowan. MacGowan was smart, talented, but flawed. And we all know now he passed away recently. He was almost hysterically flawed, but his words spoke to both my dad and I. We would sometimes wonder if he was better or worse because of the drink. My dad was completely teetotal. He never tasted alcohol in his whole life. When he made a decision on something, he stuck by it. Oh, farewell, you streets of sorrow, and farewell, you streets of pain. I'm not returned to feel more sorrow, nor to see more young men slain. Through the last 6 years I've lived through terror, and in the darkened streets the pain. Oh, how I long to find some solace. In my mind I curse the strain. My dad was a figure in the civil rights battle for Catholics in the late 60s in Northern Ireland. He helped organise rallies, but always behind the scenes. And I come from a large family. I have 74 first cousins. My father was from a family of 12. Would have been 13, but one of his siblings died very young. Most of his brothers spent time in prison for various offences related to the Troubles, and I grew up in Northern Ireland. But my dad wasn't a fighter. He was a talker, but more often a listener. His politics were simple. He wanted Ireland to be united, but not by indiscriminate force. I'm sure there was a time when he believed in the war, but I could see that he moved further and further away from those extremist positions over time. In 1987, I was 13 years of age. It was a Friday morning, 8th of May. I remember a phone call and my dad just walking out of the house without a word. That morning, an 8-man unit of the Provisional IRA had attacked a police station in Loch Gall, about 8 miles from my home. Unbeknownst to them, the SAS, an elite squad of British soldiers, were awaiting them. All 8 were killed, plus 2 unarmed civilians who just happened to be nearby. My dad was asked to identify some of the bodies. His personal secretary, Patrick Kelly, was the unit commander. I remember listening to the political songs on this album about the Birmingham Six or the Guildford Four, and those of you from the UK will know exactly what I'm talking about. I still maintain that something changed about him that day. As Shane MacGowan said, a curse on the judges, the coppers and screws who tortured the innocent wrongly accused for the price of promotion and justice to sell. May the judged be their judges when they rot in hell. Those were incredible words when I was growing up. But this record doesn't just talk about what was going on in Ireland when you lived. It talked about America. And one of my favourite Pogues songs is Thousands Are Sailing. Thousands are sailing across the Western Ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the Western Ocean. Their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance. I didn't cross the Western Ocean for opportunity, I crossed the equator. My dad came to visit us twice, once for my wedding. They were his only trips outside of Ireland. He got a passport to come here and he loved it. He embraced it, the Blue Mountains, the Southern Highlands. He would look at me and he would shake his head and he would say, "It's just amazing here, Stephen." It was Christmas Eve, babe, in the drunk tank. An old man said to me, "Won't see another one." And then he sang a song, The Rare Old Mountain Dew. I turned my face away and dreamed about you. My dad, like lots of people, loved Fairy Tale of New York. He always felt that it was kind of lyrically perfect. It was just truth. And even now, every time I hear it, it makes me smile. Those Irish insults, "You cheap, lousy faggot. Happy Christmas, your arse. I pray God it's our last." My dad knew that nothing hurts more than words. He knew that, and he was careful with them. But when he spoke, you listened, or certainly I did. Maybe everyone did. And now he's forever quiet. And it hurts. And I gave the record 10 out of 10. I love this album, Dad. My favourite record of the 80s. Anyway, I hope somebody grabs that who loves it as much as I do. Anyway, let's move on. I had to follow that with something that with other records that I loved for various reasons from the decades around the 80s. And I've been looking for this record for years. I love this album. Quite possibly my favourite record of the 90s. And then 2 of them came along at once, which means that I have a spare for this group. The record is Grand Prix by the mighty Teenage Fanclub. And there's the 2 copies. 2 first presses. I can't believe it. Teenage Fanclub, the greatest Scottish band ever. This is their 5th album. It was released, I think, 94, 95 on Creation Records. I had the CD and I just played it to death. I love every single song. About You, Sparky's Dream, Mellow Doubt, Don't Look Back, Verisimilitude, Neil Young, and Tears is the opening songs of side 1. I think one of the most perfect sides of music in the history of recorded sound. Neil Young in particular, obviously a play on words because Young is spelt with a J, but it's primarily called that because of the sound of the guitars, and the extended soloing it's just euphoric. And Sparky's Dream and Mellow Doubt are 2 of the greatest kind of acoustic pop nuggets ever recorded. I searched for first presses in good condition for donkeys. 2 came along at once. I've played them both. They sound majestic. Love this album. If you don't know it, give it a listen. Quite possibly my favorite album of the 90s. Now, all of you will know this album. And so I'm going to show you what it is, but I'm also going to show you this little snippet here. The 60s. Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. The absolute killer influence on Teenage Fanclub. The harmonies on this record influenced just about every power pop band that I loved, from the Pogues to Badfinger to Velvet Crush to Teenage Fanclub. And now this is, I think, the best sounding version of this record that you can get. And I did what I always do. When I find something that's great, I buy 2. And I'm going to show you this. So this is what you're getting. Can you see that? So that is Quality Records. So this is an Analog Productions copy of Pet Sounds, mastered from the original master tapes, pressed at QRP, unmatched quality control, meticulous deluxe packaging, limited to less than 1,000 per stamper. And normally there's, so it's T2458. For those of you who've not listened to the Analog Productions records, you are in for an unbelievable treat. There's the inner, which is the description of the record. This is super high quality vinyl. There's the QRP. It is, I cannot tell you how good this sounds. It is just an absolute, utter delight. It is the only way that I've ever heard to listen to Pet Sounds. It sounds majestic, and what an album. I still hate the sleeve. I don't know what they were doing. Holy God. But other than that, it's really special. So there's the QRP Analog Productions Mint Pet Sounds. Bang. All right, how do you follow that? This, I think, is my favorite record of the 70s. Now, you guys have seen a few copies of this over the last little while, but every time I see it, I get it, because there's always someone out there who doesn't have this record. It is David Bowie's Low. Those of you know, my dog's called Bowie. I got a big picture of Bowie on the wall, and this is my favorite Bowie record. Low. Now, this is really cool. This is a US first press, and it is some kind of mono press or some kind of promo press that I cannot find any information on. So you'll see that it's got the the black label. Now, the US first press has a Victor across it, but this has got a sticker. It's got an RCA sticker on it. And this is covering something, I don't know. It's not on Discogs. I've looked at the Dead Wax. The Dead Wax has all the matrices of the original US Indianapolis pressing. I've played it. It sounds, I've got a US copy. That's the one that I listen to. It sounds identical. It's really cool. I thought someone out there would love that to bits. So there you have it. If I had to, the 80s, the Pogues, If I Should Fall from Grace of God. The 90s, Grand Prix, Teenage Fanclub. The 60s, Pet Sounds. And the 70s, Low. Not a bad little mix, is it? All right, I've got some 80s, some punk, and some things that I'll rush through because I spent a bit of time on the Pogues, but I hope you all don't mind that I did that. It was for my dad. All right, now this is a bunch of 80s, but maybe some 80s that you might be surprised. So this is actually surprisingly hard to find. This is A Kind of Magic by Queen. This is the original pressing gatefold. Now this had a lot of songs that were on Highlander. Let's see, One Vision, Who Wants to Live Forever, of course, being prime examples. But this was a mega hit for Queen. And it's actually surprisingly hard to find in really good condition, particularly with a pristine inner like this. So side one, One Vision, A Kind of Magic, One Year of Love, Pain is So Close to Pressure, Friends Will Be Friends, Who Wants to Live Forever, etc. A really, really fun Queen album from the 80s, and that is a pristine Aussie first press. I have the two Madonna albums from the 80s, Like a Prayer, arguably one of the greatest pop albums ever made, and this one competes with it. This is Madonna's True Blue, both in fantastic condition with the inners, and True Blue also comes with the poster in excellent condition. How good is that? All right, one more 80s classic. This album, the Aussie pressing of this album is fantastic. It is as good as the UK, is as good as the Japanese, because I've listened to them all. It is the Aussie pressing of Graceland. Paul Simon's stone cold classic, albeit controversial classic. From, I want to say 86, 87. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know this. 86, yeah. And so there it is with the lyric sheet in wonderful condition. Look at that shine. Played, sounds amazing. So a little smattering of 80s gold from Queen, Madonna, and Paul Simon. Now, I actually have a run of really quite interesting punk records. You all know how much I love the Stranglers. Every time I find Stranglers, I buy them. I think they're just an absolutely superb band. This is really interesting. This is the Japanese first press gatefold of Excerpts, the first Stranglers live album. Get a Grip on Yourself, Dagenham Dave, Dead Ringer, Straighten Out, 5 minutes, but it's also got really quite cool Japanese insert with this little poster, but also it's got there's the record, the single, the additional EP that came with it, and this comes with the blue and white sleeve, which is particularly desirable. Really hard to find this, and I do not reckon this has ever been played. It looks absolutely perfect. One side has got Mean to Me, and the other side has got Choosy Susie. The Japanese only EP that was released with the Stranglers Excerpts in perfect condition. And you guys know when I say that, I mean that. What else do I have? Well, I have something that's a little bit more modern, but hopefully equally interesting. This is Green Day, The Warning from 2000. And what I have here is really special. There's the insert in perfect condition, but this is the super limited edition first press on green vinyl. In fact, green translucent vinyl. There you go. It is absolutely pristine as well. I played it for Finbar earlier. He could not believe how punchy and crazy it is. I'm just not a Green Day fan. I suspect there's someone out there who will love that more than me. It's reasonably pricey because A, super hard to find, and B, that is in near mint condition. And the final in this little, actually no, I've got two punk records. I've got a really interesting little one here. This is Revolution Now by Captain Sensible, of course, lead singer and songwriter for The Damned. Look at that for an inner. You can imagine this song's got some politics on it when it's called Revolution Now. But this is a double album, UK first press of his hit record from the mid-80s, where he just went for it. He just did everything he wanted to do. When you listen to it, it's got these little excerpts of kind of environmental messaging. At the end, it has like a 15-minute suite that is really cool. It has Jimi Hendrix-like guitar all the way through, but also these icy, kind of new wavy keyboard sections all the way through as well. Surprisingly interesting and good record. All right, final punk record. This is UK as well. This is This Is Your Life, the Addicts. Now, for those of you born in the UK, you will remember there was a TV show, I think it was on ITV, called This Is Your Life, and Eamon Andrews, was it Eamon Andrews? Was the original host, and he had a book that just looked exactly like this. The Addicts, obviously taking the piss. The Addicts who modelled themselves on the Pogues from Clockwork Orange and played this highly infectious punk rock. That is a really cool UK compilation from 1984 of the best of the Addicts. All right, 3 records to go. The Japanese first press on orange and white of really probably Janis Joplin's best record. This is Big Brother and the Holding Company, and this is Cheap Thrills. For those of you who need a bit of Janis in your life, there's that and Pearl. They're the ones to get. All right, I also have a beautiful, really lovely copy of Joshua Tree. There is the inner. The sleeve is excellent. The lyric sheet also in superb condition, but more importantly, the vinyl is absolutely pristine. This will be your forever copy. You will not need a better copy for an original press of U2's Joshua Tree. And then, I always like to have a bit of quirk in my list. This is actually surprisingly rare and quite expensive to find on Discogs. This is Ricky Nelson's Sons, and they're kind of one kind of true hit record from the 80s. If you love yourself a bit of Bon Jovi and a bit of 80s hair, you can do a lot worse. The reviews of this are surprisingly good, and it is expensive to find. I won't charge the normal rates, but it's up there. And then finally, a bit of Aussie. What about this? The Choir Boys from, I think it's 85. Their Big Bad Noise record that featured Run to Paradise, Boys Will Be Boys, Struggle Time. There's the original inner, the album again in absolutely pristine condition. I hope you can see that. that is it for list 1. I hope you found something that intrigued you. A little smattering of personal records for me, and then something weird and wonderful in there. Hopefully something piqued your interest. As always, please leave a comment. If you know the Pogues, if you know that record, let me know what you think of it. I love it for all sorts of reasons. Like, comment, all those things. If you want to be on my mailing list to potentially buy some of these records, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Thank you all. Look out for list 2.